This is Middle East Matters on France 24. I'm Hala Mohideen. Coming up in today's show, Iraqi civilians recount their experience at the hands of the Islamic State group as Iraqi and Kurdish forces close in on Mosul. We'll introduce you to Michel Aoun, the new Lebanese president, whose election brings to an end over 2 years of political deadlock. And is this tomb in Jerusalem the final resting place of Jesus Christ? Well, believers seem to think so, and it's being reopened for safety reasons. But first to Iraq, where the battle to retake the city of Mosul from the Islamic State group is gaining pace. Iraqi and Kurdish forces are making steady progress as they close in on the IS stronghold. But with every town and village they liberate comes a chilling reminder of the extremist brutality and the violence they exact on civilian populations. Shirley Sitbon has this report.
They hoped the white flags they raised over their homes would keep Islamic State group militants away. They were wrong. Only a few days ago, the jihadists controlled this village, located about 10 kilometers away from Mosul. When Kurdish forces circled the position, villagers say the militants set up explosives and used them as human shields as they attempted an escape.
We were all human shields, the whole village. The militants hid amongst us. Before finally leaving, they kidnapped 14 people. They fled to Mosul with those hostages.
This villager says the Islamic State group placed their artillery weapons between two homes. One is now completely destroyed. It belonged to his family.
My uncle lived here. His name was Ahmed. The Islamic State group's fighters settled next door. Last week, the coalition's aviation bombed their arsenal.
8 members of his family died in the explosion.
The jihadists said, "You're not real Muslims, but heretics. So we're happy that you're being bombed. You're traitors."
Around Mosul, about 8,000 families have reportedly been abducted in villages still under jihadist control. The Islamic State group uses the hostages to slow down the Iraqi and Kurdish offensive. Some Iraqis have run away from their homes to save themselves from the terrorists. These women and children could have lost their lives in the escape, but they felt it was still safer to flee than to remain close to the militants. The villagers are now safe with the Peshmerga forces, who have brought them to a refugee camp.
Bring me this girl's mother.
The fathers are still wearing the beards the jihadists forced them to grow.
They have no mercy for anyone. When we told them we had no work, they used to answer, "Come fight with us." If we had nothing to eat, they also said, "Come fight with us." Those are their methods.
These families have started doing things that were banned for more than 2 years, like smoking cigarettes and living their lives as they wish to.
Now, a 2-year political vacuum has now come to an end over in Lebanon, with Michel Aoun being elected president this week. He campaigned on a promise to protect Lebanon from spillover from the Syrian civil war. The ex-army chief has the backing of Iran and Hezbollah, whose support managed to push him over the finish line. Alexander Orcott tells us more now about Michel Aoun.
Throughout the campaign, his face has been plastered on banners and billboards around the country. At 81, Michel Aoun is set to once again play an important role in Lebanon's history books, taking on the presidential position that must go to a Christian. The former military man who was idolized by his troops is a controversial figure, having spent his career making and breaking alliances to suit his political ambitions. His ascension towards the presidential palace comes after reaching an agreement on the 20th of October with another Lebanese strongman, Saad Hariri, who's expected to gain the prime ministerial post out of the deal.
Of course, there are political divisions, and that's what we're trying to fix in order to reach national unity.
Most within the Lebanese political class have rallied behind this agreement in recent weeks, after 2.5 years of power vacuum. The man still known as the general has even managed to secure the support of his traditional enemies. Michel Aoun fought against some of them during the 1980s civil war, when he commanded the Lebanese armed forces. He later vowed to fight the invading Syrian army to the death in 1990, but fled to France when they entered Beirut. He made a triumphant return in 2005, 11 days after the Syrian troops withdrew under international pressure.
Today is a joyous day. I'm happy to be back after 15 years out of the country. I return while the sun shines again for freedom, so that we can all make new Lebanon together.
But a few months later, Aoun shocked everyone, siding with Hezbollah, the historic ally of Damascus. The Shia group backed the general's presidential bid to help push him across the finish line. After more than 45 votes, a candidate has finally earned the two-thirds majority required to be named as head of state.
Turkey has been criticised by the US and EU after at least 12 senior staff members from the opposition newspaper Cumhuriyet were detained this week. The Istanbul prosecutor's office said the detentions followed an investigation into the paper's alleged support of US-based cleric Fethullah Gulen. Well, Gulen and his followers are blamed by President Erdogan for masterminding the July 15th coup attempt, accusations denied by the cleric himself. Well, the paper rejects the accusations and has demanded its staff members are released. Now, the people of Yemen are being held hostage to personal and reckless political decisions. That's the damning assessment of the UN Special Envoy to Yemen, appealing to the UN Security Council to back a peace plan that both sides have rejected. The conflict in Yemen has been described as the region's forgotten war, and it's the country's civilians paying the hardest price. Thousands have been killed in the crossfire, tens of thousands more now on the brink of starvation. And even those who have the means to leave can't escape due to a blockade by Saudi Arabia.
In the Sana'a Teaching Hospital, many patients need to be evacuated abroad to receive treatments for their injuries. But getting out of the Yemeni capital is impossible. In August, the international airport was shut after peace talks collapsed. Marwan got hit by an airstrike as he was attending a funeral.
His case is getting worse and worse. His injuries are getting more serious every day because we don't have the necessary medicine or medical equipment here in Yemen. His situation is not stable. He can't have his operation here. We call on the whole world and the Islamic world to at least open Yemen's airport to send these cases outside Yemen.
Yemen has been rocked by conflict since rebels overran Sana'a and swathes of the country in 2015. A Saudi-led coalition intervened in support of the country's internationally recognized government. It has since enforced a maritime and air blockade on Yemen.
This decision affects people who are stuck outside Yemen and those who are in Yemen and need humanitarian aid. There are thousands of people, students, patients, passengers, and many others who cannot travel.
Humanitarian flights are allowed, but only if the coalition is given advance notice. This causes huge delays in the delivery of much-needed aid inside the country.
One of the bigger problems we face, as you know, and we all face in this country, is the Yemeni air flights don't come to Sana'a. And we've also been calling on the parties to allow these flights to resume back into Sana'a so that people can get much-needed respite from the closure of the airport in Sana'a.
The blockade affects many aspects of Yemenis' lives. Abdul Salam could have been studying for a master's in the English language in India.
I received a scholarship for a master's degree abroad, but because the airport was closed, I'm stuck and can't travel. There are other airports in Yemen we can travel from, but unfortunately we're not able to reach them because of the insecurity and high risk of travelling on the southern roads. So I won't be able to complete my studies anytime soon.
Nearly 7,000 people have been killed and millions need humanitarian aid, most of which can only be delivered through the airport.
And finally, it's one of the most sacred tombs in the world and has been opened for the first time in centuries due to health and safety concerns. Well, Christians believe the tomb lying underneath the Holy Sepulchre Church in Jerusalem is where Jesus Christ himself was buried. Now that tomb has been briefly reopened, and scientists are collecting data to find out more about the site and its secrets.
It's a very special day in Christianity's holiest site. On the other side of these panels lies the tomb in which Christians believe Jesus Christ was buried. Today, for the first time in centuries, it's being reopened. Visitors are trying to peek inside to get a glimpse of this unique event. The operation has been in the boxes for half a century. Its goal, restoring the cave so it doesn't crumble and endanger lives. Construction work is an opportunity to find more about the tomb. Does it really belong to Jesus?
The information they find may not be conclusive. If they find DNA, what will they compare it with? If they find skeletal remains, they may have belonged to Jesus, or maybe to someone else. What could be interesting is to find evidence that can be clearly dated. That way we can know if the tomb was dug 2,000 years ago.
Greek scientists pull back a marble slab that covers the tomb. These images show the limestone burial bed beneath still intact. The existence of the tomb is first mentioned in the first 4 books of the New Testament, written decades after the crucifixion around AD 30. In the 4th century, the Romans were the first to identify the tomb, among others also found in the site, which used to be a cemetery. Several centuries later, Crusaders are believed to have made this cross on the marble. With the data they've collected, scientists now have a chance to find out if the New Testament was right.
And that's it from me and the rest of the Middle East Matters team. Remember to follow us on Twitter or like our Facebook page for the latest developments across the region. And we'll see you again at the same time next week. Bye for now.